Bill 21-0094, Public Safety Apprenticeship Program Establishment, the Hometown Heroes Act, for the purpose of providing for the establishment and implementation of a public safety apprenticeship program for Baltimore City, providing for the development and oversight of the program by the Baltimore City Fire Department in partnership with certain other public safety agencies in Baltimore City, establishing the purposes of the program, and requiring that the Baltimore City Fire Department report annually certain information to the mayor and city council, and requiring that the report to be made available on the department's website. This bill was introduced on June 8th, 2021, and it was sponsored by Councilmember Chris Burnett. Councilmember Burnett, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and colleagues. So there's a famous quote that says, "Don't tell me what you believe. Show me your checkbook, and I'll tell you what you believe." And earlier this year, the Maryland General Assembly passed the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, which contains a host of educational policy recommendations that were researched and studied by the Kerwin Commission. And one of the critical policy areas in that document is an emphasis placed on college and career readiness pathways. And this is important because in 2019, the Baltimore-based Fund for Educational Excellence released a report revealing that for the last 6 years, students who completed a CTE program in Baltimore City earned an annual median income of less than $13,000. And since I started on the council, and even years before I got here, there have been continuous talk about fire and police recruitment efforts and how the creation of a cadet and apprenticeship program for the youth and young adults of Baltimore City would help to fill the ranks of our public safety agencies with people who have a vested interest in the city. But when those hearings concluded, very little tangible action was taken to build a true pipeline that would connect our young people to these careers. And in no way trying to diminish the work that has been done. But the Hometown Heroes Act will finally move us from conversations to action by establishing a public safety apprenticeship program, which is the policy portion of this package of legislation. And there's a separate bill, the Homegrown Heroes Fund, which is the charter amendment that will support the initiatives laid out in this policy. This program will allow us to, sorry, lost my spot there, my statement. This program will allow us to have positive interactions with hundreds of young people and provide us with the opportunity to employ 50 young adults per year in the cadet phase of the program, which will allow us to hire locally and build a workforce that is representative of Baltimore City communities. So as we continue to work on establishing pathways into the middle class for the 3,000 plus Baltimore City high school students that graduate each year, the opportunity to create a non-wavering program and fund that invests directly into the futures of our children and our city is a decision that none of us should take for granted. And with that, looking forward to a positive discussion on the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. The committee will now hear from agency representatives. Once again, please state your name. We're going to start off with the fire department. Do we have someone from the fire department? I see Chief Shiloh is on the line. I see Chief Ford is on the line as well. We'll come back to the fire department.
Sir, I'm up and running.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kim.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
How's it going, Kim?
Hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Kim, I think you're having connective issues.
Can you all hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Hi, sorry about that, Mr. Chair.
No worries.
Okay, and council members, Kim Washington from the fire department.
Yep, we're just looking for you.
Yes, we submitted a bill report.
And do you stand by your report?
Mr. Chair, we submitted a bill report, had discussions with the councilman Councilman Burnett, and we stand by our report and our conversations with Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Chief Ford. Next up, we've got the Police Department.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Michelle Wurzberger, and I'm Director of Government Affairs for the Baltimore Police Department. We also submitted our bill report, and we had, I think, a very productive conversation with the bill sponsor. We appreciate his intent, his desire to do a couple of different things. One, make sure there's a pipeline for young Baltimore City residents into employment, but also into employment in law enforcement and public service. So we absolutely appreciate that. We do have some concerns that we have laid out in our bill report, and we mentioned to the bill sponsor. I understand that we're going to have a series of conversations to try and figure out how to balance the goals of the councilman as well as the existing programs that some of the agencies like BPD already has. That said, we do have a number of BPD team members on the line to answer any questions. We have Lieutenant Colonel Monique Brown, we have Major Derek Loeffler, we have Managing Director Amy Guevara, and of course, me and Shannon Conway.
Thank you, Director Wurzberger. Next, we've got the Law Department.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Elena DePieter from the Law Department. The Law Department is fully supportive of the concept of this bill and the program itself. We just feel it needs a little tweaking to make it legal. The first issue that we identified was the residency requirements for the paid internships and the paid public safety cadet post positions. They are, because they're paid, they could be considered employees since they're subject to the direction of superiors or city agent or city department heads, and that would put it squarely within the prohibition against residency requirements by local governments for employees, which is part of state law. So, but I think that the easy way to remedy that is if the residency requirement was taken out of the part about the paid internships, there's already a residency requirement for the program itself. So if we just left the residency requirement for the program itself in, because that's not an employment related requirement, and took it out of the employment part, then the people coming into the program would have to be city residents, and they would most likely be city residents should they move on to the internship opportunities. So, and the same issue presented itself with the safety cadet post, although their residency requirement was different in that it required two years pre-participation residency in the city, which can have its own problems, but I think we can do the same thing here with removing the residency requirement from the discussion of the paid portion of the program and leave it in the qualification part for participation in the program, and you would have the same outcome. And then finally, I think we need to tweak some of the provisions dealing with who sets the parameters for employment of the various paid internships. The charter vests the Department of Human Resources and the Civil Service Commission with most of the authority to provide for hiring and firing and that sort of thing. So if they're going to be paid employees of the city, they would be subject to those same requirements. And the setting of the salary or not the salary, but the hourly rate in the bill itself also hinges on the charter authority of the Board of Estimates. So, and DHR's authority in Article 7, Section 97H. So I think those things are all fixable. So we're happy to work with the sponsor and the committee to fix those problems.
Awesome. Thank you, Elena.
And Mr. Chair, I would note that obviously we keep going through the agency reports. I forgot to mention in my opening that like the other fire bills, We are going to continue to work with the agencies and mayor's office to come up with amendments. Won't talk about them today because they're still in process, but we have very much been taking everything you're going to hear into consideration, and we'll continue to meet with folks to make sure we get it right.
Thank you. All right, next up, we've got the Department of Finance.
Good afternoon, Mara James, Legislative Engagement Lead for the Department of Finance. The Department of Finance stands by our report. We oppose this legislation as written. Several of the concerns that were raised by our partner agencies are in our report. I would just also add that we feel that it would be important to allow the flexibility for the agencies to have these recruitment programs meet their needs as those change over time. And the criteria of establishing specific requirements of hiring 50 individuals annually, while we think that that could be addressed and budgetarily through addressing some vacancies, and that would save in overtime possibly, those numbers would be dependent on funding levels and vacant positions. And so meeting that requirement annually could be onerous for the agencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mara. Next, we've got the Office of Emergency Management.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to speak for OEM. OEM's director is not available at this time, and his report basically coincides with mine as well.
All right, thank you, Chief Ford. Next up, we've got the Baltimore City Public School System.
Good afternoon. My name is Kumasi Vines, Director of Career Readiness for Baltimore City Public Schools. And we stand by this report that we submitted. We are in support of the bill in spirit. As many of you have heard from me and other folks in the office, we released our strategic plan. Councilman Burnett actually referenced it a little earlier and some of the data we found there. So we're reviewing all of our programs, but our mantra is preparing our young folks for in-demand, high-wage, high-skilled jobs. And we recognize that the public safety sector is a viable pathway for many of our students. We currently have a relationship with the fire department through our career and technical education pathways that we have around schools, and we are constantly trying to build that program. And we also are in conversations with them about establishing a high school apprenticeship program. And Chief Shiloh and the entire department has been great partners, and we are continuing to work on improvement across the board. So just in summary, we agree with the spirit of this bill and are we're looking forward to working with our city agency counterparts to create great opportunities for our young folk.
Thank you, Kumasi. Next up, we've got, and last up, we've got the Department of Human Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Distinguished committee members, Quentin Herbert, Director of Human Resources. And likewise, I won't belabor the point, we support the bill in spirit. However, as it is currently drafted, we oppose. I think it's worth mentioning at this point that Baltimore City has the longest standing public sector apprenticeship program in the country. Some of our other agencies, DPW, Rec, and Parks, have been using the Joint Apprenticeship Program to pipeline students into employment for many, many years. And so we are in support of apprenticeship programs. However, these public safety positions, both in the fire department and the police department, are civil service positions and subject to the civil service rules. And so we stand by our bill with respect to that. Some of the issues were raised by our colleagues in the law department, and we would stand by our report. And I've been working with the councilman's office to address some of those issues and some proposed amendments, and looking forward to those continued discussions.
Thank you, Director Herbert. With that, I'm going to open up the floor to questions if folks on the committee have questions about the bill and the reports. I don't see any hands.
I do. If no one
Council, the floor is yours.
So the first question I had was for the fire department. Could you, in 2018, the Maryland Apprenticeship and Training Council approved the accreditation of the police, sorry, this is questions for the police department. For the police department's cadet apprenticeship program, I do have a similar one for fire. Can you explain to the committee what comes along with this designation, and has this designation helped with recruitment efforts or the hiring of more cadets?
Major Loeffler, do you want to
Yep.
take that?
Hi, Councilman Burnett. Major Loeffler with Education and Training. So I oversee the cadets and the cadet program for BPD. So the cadets attend classes 2 days a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then the other 3 days of the week are the on-the-job training program that we do. And they rotate through various assignments within BPD while they're doing the cadet program prior to entering the police academy. Once the cadets reach at about 20 years and 6 months, we initiate the final background process for the sworn part. And once they complete the sworn background, we enter them into a police academy around that 20 years and 6 month time frame. So currently we have 6 cadets at ENT in various stages of the program. I can't specifically address the impact on recruitment and stuff like that.
Okay. And I guess as a quick follow-up, how much are they paid per hour, and do they receive health insurance benefits?
So they do get compensated at, there's a cadet classification. I don't have the exact pay rate in front of me. It is less than the police officer pay rate, but once they transition to the police academy, they get the compensation that anyone does starting the police academy.
Councilman, I believe they make $31,388.
Okay, thank you. And similar question for fire. The department is currently working to gain, based on our conversations, approval for from the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation to participate in an EMT apprenticeship program. Can someone explain to the committee in detail how this program will be structured, who will be able to participate, marketing plans, and secondly, would they be able to get a certification they need to join the Baltimore City Fire Department after completing 12th grade through this program?
Chief Shiloh, if you can start, I'll probably follow up after you, please.
Good afternoon. The Maryland apprenticeship, the youth apprenticeship through the state, we just got word today that we were approved for that program last night. The Department of Labor went ahead and approved our application. So it's in the very early stages. It's only going to be Baltimore City schools. It's not going to be limited to the 4 CTE schools. It will be opened up to all the schools in the city. I'm in the very early stages. We just got approval. So very shortly, I'll be meeting with the school system to see how we can structure that. That would start in the summer after a 10th grade and continue through the summer before graduation. It's 450 hours. 125 of those hours are instructional hours, and it's a paid apprenticeship program. I don't know if that was all of the questions.
No, it was. And just a quick follow-up on the pay. Can you let us know how much they make, and would they receive health benefits?
They have to make at least minimum wage, which I believe is $11.75 an hour. It is a non-benefited apprenticeship, as well as the cadets that we currently have. The current cadets, we have 3 of them right now. who've been with us for about 3 weeks now, they get $15 an hour, and that's also a non-benefited position. It's a temporary short-term position. As far as certifications for the cadets, I can speak to that. They're starting EMT in January. We expect that to be finished probably by the end of March. Then they will test with the National Registry, and then we expect them to get state certifications for emergency medical technician.
Got it. I don't know how you want to do this, Mr. Chair, as far as rounds, but those were, I think I asked maybe two, definitely more than two.
All good, no worries. I've actually got a question as well. Can you explain how the promotion after training programs, are those positions protected by civil service rules?
Mr. Chair, you dropped off part of your conversation. Personally, I couldn't hear it.
Sure. I asked if you could explain how the promotion after training program works with the community aid positions, and if those positions are protected by civil service rules.
I'd have to lean on the Director of Human Resources to speak to how the promotion after, but we bring individuals in at the high school level, and we train them to EMT and expose them to fire service experience, and we transition them after graduation into being a part of the department. I cannot express to you about how the process works, but we've been able to do it for the last, I think, 5 years.
For that process, when candidates complete the program, are they hired from an eligibility list, or do they transfer?
No, it's a promotion from the community aid position into either EMT or firefighter, EMT firefighter. They have the ability to select the track they want to go into. And we've continued that since the beginning. And in fact, first class of 4 individuals who came in this program, 1 went into EMT and 3 went into firefighter EMT.
Got it. And does that require additional testing?
No.
Okay.
Excuse me, Chief.
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
I'm sorry. They would be required to pass a 1582 physical, which is it's a little bit more extensive physical to make sure that they can put breathing apparatus on and go in a fire building. They also would go through our physical ability test, depending on which pathway they take. They're 2 different tests.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, thank you for pointing that out, Chief Shallow. But it's no written list, nothing they have to go through. They're put in the position where they have to go through the physical examination, just like a newly hired person would have to do in order to be a newly selected person in order to be a newly hired person.
Got it. And Director Herbert, can you speak at all of this?
Yes, I'll speak first specifically to the police department because I'm a bit more familiar with their cadet program. While those cadets are matriculating and when they get to the end of that program, they are on a list. They are placed on a certified eligible list. So when they go into the police officer position, they are pulled from a list. So it's the civil service rules are satisfied. With the fire department, I would have to research and get back to you because I do not believe that the EMT classification is a civil service position. Those positions were created as temporary positions at one point some time ago. The thought was that folks weren't going to sit in those positions for a long time. I would need to double check to see if we are putting a list together for those folks who are matriculating and moving into EMT firefighter positions, which would be a civil service classification. And I would just need to confirm and verify whether or not my office is putting together a list for them to pull from, getting those folks onto a list.
Mr. Chairman, can I add to that?
Yes, Director.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you, Director Herbert. So there are, they may be on a list, but they have additional hoops they have to jump through. The Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission establishes the criteria for all police officer trainees, which those individuals would be if they are transitioning from cadet to a police officer. In order to qualify for a provisional certification, all candidates must submit to and pass a background check, polygraph exam, psychological exam, and an in-person interview within 365 days prior to the application being sent to the Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission. So these individuals have got to go through those final steps. They do not have to go through the physical agility test again or the NTN exam, but they do need to satisfy those other requirements.
Thank you. That helps a lot. Any additional questions from folks? Councilman Burnett.
Thank you. So this is for fire. For the 2021-2022 school year, there are 64 seniors, 53 juniors, and 124 sophomores enrolled in the EMT fire program hosted in partnership between city schools and the fire department. If each of these students in the career track successfully complete the school-based or state training curriculums that they are enrolled in, does the fire department have the capacity to hire each of these young adults over the next 3 years? And if the answer is no, what are the alternatives for these kids as they come through?
Well, the answer is yes. Over the next 3 years, we have positions, vacant positions that we can slowly matriculate them in. But the reality of the circumstances that normally we don't have that many complete the program because the level of training that's required in EMS. It is a college level course, and consequently a lot of the members, a lot of the young people start into it and step away from it because they see how challenging it is. Chief Shiloh, if you want to speak a little bit to that you know, I'm okay with that because you can explain more in context of what the challenging aspects are.
Yes, like the chief said, EMT is a college level course. I can say that the 3 kids that we have in here now, I have no doubt that they're going to pass it. In the past, and I've only been in this position for a year and a half, from looking at prior records, quite a lot of them have failed in the first module. I don't ever remember that number of kids coming in. I think the numbers that you quoted in the 60s might include both 11th and 12th. It may even include the 10th grade as well. And by the time they get to the senior year, I think Dunbar only has 26 kids. The numbers are much smaller than that. I don't know if that answers the question.
I mean, really was just trying to get at, I think the Chief Ford answered about sort of what happens after graduation. So I think that was answered overall.
Okay.
The other question I had, and this is more both for fire and police, so sort of a 2-part question around recruitment for the existing programs. The first is the Office of Employment Development has a Grads to Careers program. How active has the fire and police department been in working with them to utilize their database for recruitment purposes?
I know we reached out to, and I'm sure PD did too, but we reached out to MOED when we first started these programs to get assistance, and we've continuously communicated with them throughout the process. But you have to remember that we have been located into 4 schools specifically. Initially it was 1, then we moved to 2, then ultimately we moved to 4. And based upon what Chief Shiloh has started moving toward with the Maryland Apprenticeship program, with the Maryland's apprenticeship program, is now we're going to look at it citywide. So it's been specifically focusing all those, but MOED has been a point of contact for us continuously in recruiting, continuously.
And for the police side, PD side?
Yeah, good question. I'm not sure on that specific program. I know that we do work very closely with MOED on all of our hiring. One thing that I do want to point out is that, and we briefed the council some time ago on our initial marketing strategy. Some of you may remember the tagline is "Be a part of the greatest comeback story in America." And that marketing plan was geared towards hiring Baltimore City residents, women, other minorities, and particularly all of those folks who live in the minorities and women who reside in Baltimore City. It's been a minute since we rolled out that particular marketing plan. We are in the process of refreshing that. We are hoping that we'll be able to brief the council shortly on that. But what we are really focusing on now is the new contract and all of the benefits that the new contract has in terms of additional pay for college degrees. And that coupled with the tuition reimbursement we already have, the program that we are working through the cadet program where they get their 2 credits every single marking period is not the right term. Sorry. Every semester, that's the word. And so that if young people can see the benefit of, coming in, working through the academy, working through the cadet program, getting those credits such that when they come on, they're already eligible for a higher pay scale. We think that that's really, really important. And again, hopefully we can be able to show the council that program soon.
Okay, am I coming through? I couldn't unmute myself. Last question on this around recruitment, and these are just sort of a basic for both fire and police. Do you use graduates of these programs that have already come through to recruit, their peers as they're 12th grade graduating? I'm sure they know some of the, I don't know if you call them undergraduates in high school, underclassmen. To recruit them into the pipeline as well?
Well, the short answer is absolutely, and we send them back and specifically into the schools and communities and neighborhoods they come from, so people can possibly see themselves in these young people. Now we send different groups as well, but we absolutely do that to try to show the individuals that not only can they see themselves in these people, but also they can see success in them, and that's very, very important. And I want to point one thing out, Michelle with PD. Michelle, I'm gonna parenthetically insert this. On YouTube, one of you all's commercials came on when I was on YouTube. It's a fantastic commercial. It actually it's spot on. I wanted to say that. So that's just an editorial statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Ford. I got to tell you, the first time I saw the long version where the commissioner is standing there and he's talking about this comeback story, and you see other officers and even current cadets kind of and you see them kind of pipe up. It gave me chills, and I'm not someone who is affected that way often, but it's incredibly powerful. But to answer so thank you, Chief Ford, for acknowledging that. To answer your question, Councilman, I don't know that I can put it any better than Chief Ford did, but the folks who go through that program are the best advocates for it, frankly. And so we have cadets who are out there trying to sell it. We have women who are out there selling this career path to other women, because it's only those folks who can say, look, you know what, you can do this just like I can do this. And so they are a huge component of that marketing effort. So.
Thank you. I'll wait for the next round. I did have one more, Mr. Chair.
I don't see any other questions, and I think I'm done. So you can go ahead.
Okay. So this is for either police or human resources. What is the job classification used for the police cadet position?
So for us, and certainly Director Herbert or Director Guevara, you can correct me. I know that the cadets sit in the pins, in the police officer pins. I don't know their classification off the top of my head, but I know that that's what they occupy.
I would defer to Ms. Rivera, but I believe that they are in a cadet classification. I can double check, and if you give me a minute, I can respond back to that question.
I guess if you need more time, you can also just send it to the committee. If you're good with that, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, that totally works. We're going to revisit, of course, this bill later on. There's some work we need to do on it. So if Director Herbert, you could send that, that would actually be helpful. All right, Councilman Burnett, any other questions before we go into public testimony?
I'm good for now. Again, we're still in conversation with all of the folks that in the hearing. So stay tuned.
Awesome. Thank you, Councilman. All right, we're going to go to public testimony. If you'd like to testify, please use the raise hand function on the bottom right of the WebEx application. We read the instructions earlier, but if you don't recall, we'll first go through anyone who's got the hand raised and then go through phone calls. You'll hear 2 beeps when you're unmuted. If you don't want to testify, please say so. All right, and I'm looking now. I don't see any hands up to testify. Do we have any hands raised or anybody on the phone? All right, and we don't have anybody on the phone lines. Okay, so with that, we are gonna wrap up. I'm gonna give Councilman Burnett any closing statements before we wrap up today.
Just looking forward to continued dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Burnett. All right, with that, this hearing is in recess.